everyone. I think we'll probably wait a minute or two to give everyone a chance to log in. I know it's lunchtime for a lot of you. So before we begin, there were a few things I wanted to mention for everyone to keep in mind. You are welcome to share in the chat box. It's available to all of you, and we will respond as we can. Also, there will be a number of resources shared in the chat box, so keep an eye out for that. We are recording today. It is recorded live. We will archive it for later use, and you will be able to access that at a later date as well. Everyone's camera and microphone will remain off through the duration of the town hall today, but you are able to share in the chat. We have ASL interpretation services available, and CART is available as well. So if you want to turn on the captions, you are welcome to. Respect is always an issue here. People are sharing personally and professionally. We want to make sure that people feel comfortable sharing. We have a variety of topics that we'll be discussing today, so just be respectful and mindful of that. We do have one poll question for people to fill out. So that'll be an interactive part and just kind of a way for us to engage as we do introductions. So just wanted to give everyone a heads up for that the poll question will be coming up soon. All right, I think we ought to go ahead and begin now. It is 12:02 Central Time. So welcome, everyone. I am thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled that you are here. We have town twice a year, once in the fall and once in the spring. So here we are. Welcome to the Spring Townhall. The agenda for today, we have 5 objectives and areas that we're going to take some deep dives in. We'll give you an opportunity to learn what is new here at the center. We've got a lot of things going on. Many resources we'll be releasing and have released. We're going to do a deep dive about disclosure and how people share or identify their needs in terms of their disability. Thus far, we have learned a lot. We'll be sharing some of that with you today, and a new study that we'll be focusing on with that even more. I am thrilled to have a student panel today for this discussion. It will be led by a student with students on the panel, specifically about issues surrounding disclosure and what impacts the decision to disclose or not disclose. So be ready for that. I'm very much looking forward to this today. We also want your thoughts and your feedback about disclosure and what the impacts are on an individual basis when you decide to disclose or you don't, what that might mean for students in higher education. After that, we'll get some feedback and conclusion, and we will ask for feedback on the setup for town hall and what we could discuss and how we can use that feedback in future town sessions. Next slide, please. All right, what's new? We've got so much going on around here. The QR code there on the screen, you're welcome to take that so you can dive right in with us. We have a new course available. It's online learning. That opportunity is available to all of you. It takes about 90 minutes in total, so not a lot of time. The investment is small, but the impact is huge. Understanding disabilities, analyzing data, understanding that data, and applicable strategies, all based on our research that we've been doing for 2 years. We're thrilled about it. There's some activities in there, some videos, different types of resources embedded in the course. Like I say, it's a new course bundle we've got, and it's very, very exciting for us. And we will follow that up with 2 additional bundles in the second new release that we've got is our research page. If you're curious about the research that we're conducting here at the center, you can go in and see all the studies we're doing. We've got it organized on the page. We've got a new web page, in fact. There are 10 studies on that page, and then there's a lengthy list below each of them with all kinds of resources. It's labeled by audiences, faculty, staff, students, researchers, administrators. So you can click on it in that way. You will find a whole host of resources on our webpage. And we update that anytime we have a new paper released. In addition to that, the favorite part of our work here at the center is campus accessibility, the spotlight series that we do. We've got a new one from the University of Utah talking about the field placements. So when people are learning and applied studies, like at a hospital or a health clinic, somewhere out in the field, people want to know what does access look like, what it could or should look like. And so there are lots of thoughts surrounding that out in the field. And we've had some aha moments in our work and highlighting or spotlighting the University of Utah. The QR code's here on the screen, and you can see all of our spotlights. We have a total of 9. Next slide, please. Another new release, we've got our annual research report. 2 years ago, we focused on student accessibility. Now we're talking about faculty. We've got a national report that really goes in deep about accessibility practices. Surveys and interviews were both used in this research. And we have a measure and a matrix in terms of how to ask these questions. And that is available for you to use on your campus or within your research. It's available to everyone there. You're able to use this. We are very, very excited to share this out. Again, these links are being placed in the chat box. In addition to that, we've got the QR code here up on the slide for your convenience. Next slide, please. And for faculty, again, we've been focusing here on the center and this year on faculty. So we've got 2 new resources that apply in terms of what access strategies could and should look like on a college campus. The first is accommodations. That's a conversation in terms of how the faculty are talking to each other now. What does the conversation look like now? What are the strategies? What are we doing? What are you doing in your classroom? What am I doing in mine? There's a toolkit available that really guides everyone in terms of how to facilitate that conversation. It is awesome. It's based on real life examples, real life scenarios that are happening out there, discussion questions, how to apply it, and how to have that conversation in your space. So I really look forward to hearing what people are saying about using that guide and that toolkit in future conversations. The second thing is related to the guide and the scenarios and how to really get a better understanding of how people respond to different access issues and challenges and opportunities. So, for example, if a student hands you a letter let's say at the last minute for an accommodation, let's say it's the day before an exam, what do you do with that? How do you respond? Or let's say they ask for access without said letter, and there's no official letter that you've been handed. There are different types of questions and scenarios and different answers, different options at how you can function well within the system, because you can get some things immediately in place. And so it's a really nice resource for faculty from and with students and how to engage with each other and make it successful. Next slide, please. All right. So that's just a brief overview of some of the new resources we've got. You can always go to our Learning Hub and the research page. We've got those available to you all the time. It's about access and accommodations. That's a heavy focus there. So now the center itself, uh, we're 2.5 years old. And so we're about halfway through our grant cycle, which was a 5-year cycle. We have learned from students. We have learned from faculty. We have learned from the institutions or the campuses themselves. So now we want to go in depth about disclosure and the decision making surrounding it. That decision is really a critical part of how access even begins to happen, whether it's formal or informal. It really doesn't matter. Disclosure is happening. and it's a big part of the student experience on a college campus. We will go and get a more in-depth understanding necessarily of how, but what the impacts are of disclosing and kind of what kind of relationships with the type of disability, like how you have that relationship with your disability and what do you disclose? Is it the diagnosis itself? How long you've had the diagnosis? And how long have you experienced that disability? It really depends on, is it impacting your academic life, your social life, thinking about your future, how it could and should look when disclosing or not. So it's very interesting to understand more about disability and identity and the relationship between disclosing disability and relationships on campus with peers, with faculty, with your future boss. And the disclosure process is not nothing. And so, how do we manage that emotionally? Because there's a lot of emotions running underneath that during the disclosure process. And then over time, developing what it looks like from day one to, to year four on campus or year two, halfway in there, right? Like, what does that look like? And the decision making surrounding it, I feel like it evolves over time because there are often positive and negative experiences that influence that over time. And so, related to that, what type of barriers and opportunities are students facing within that disclosure process? What does it look like? And then, how does that impact their accommodation use, accommodations in general, and are they effective? And then the support within the school and within the spaces that they find themselves. So, there are many different factors that play into this disclosing a disability. And so that is one of our studies on the agenda for next year that we've got in the pipeline for the center. Next slide, please. So we've learned a lot about disclosure already. For example, about one half of students within our study were diagnosed after they got on campus, after they were accepted into college and come into class. So think about that. It comes after, which means some students did not disclose day one because they did not know day one. If you don't know, or you don't yet have the official diagnosis, or you don't have the way to talk about it, you don't have the label or the diagnosis, you cannot possibly disclose on day one. So think about the gap in time for these students, for the process. And then you get the diagnosis itself, and then that leads us to the disclosure decision-making tree that we're running into right now. 36% of students with a disability do not disclose to anyone, not a soul, not a peer, not faculty, staff, not the disability services office on campus, literally no one. 36%. It is a really high number, to be honest, if you think about it. If you really take a look at that, they're not disclosing at all. That's 36% of our students. So one thing that we want to dive deeper into is really getting a sense of what's happening there with that non-disclosed group and really getting a sense of why. Now, if of disabled students who do disclose, 47% of them disclose to disability office or someone on campus, someone in that type of role. So that's less than half still. Less than half of those who disclose only disclose, only half of them are disclosing to that office, which means the other students are disclosing to other people, possibly peers, maybe their teacher, but they didn't go to the office. They didn't get the official office involved. So there are really many pathways to disclosure, and we really want to understand more about that. Next slide, please. So we already know that students are critically thinking about disclosing. They want to know, okay, if I disclose, will it help me in some way? If there's any doubt that it will benefit them or help them, they are more likely to not disclose. And previous experiences impact future decision making surrounding disclosure. So, if it's a negative experience or a positive experience, that will influence their future decision making surrounding this topic. The power dynamic or power differential, will the faculty say, blame them for their disability impacting their learning, or maybe not give them as much agency in their learning? And how much information is necessary? Because then there's some privacy issues that crop up, right? That comes up often. Feeling like I don't want the school to know that much about me. I don't want my professor to know that much about me. I don't want to do that. That's not necessary. That's mine. That's a piece of me, and I don't want to share that piece of me. So that plays into it. And then related to that, visibility. If someone cannot see or notice the disability, do I disclose? And do I disclose differently than if it's a disability that cannot be hidden? There are so many factors that go into this decision. Next slide. Okay, that's some background and some research background for all of you. Now, I am beyond thrilled to have this opportunity to hear from students themselves. So, I would first like to introduce our host for today, Dalton. Would you'll be joining us here soon? All right, if you want to go ahead and pop up, Dalton. Hello, and we have our interpreter joining Dalton on screen. So, Dalton is a part of our team here at the center, at the National Center here. He's a research assistant with us right now. Thrilled to give you this opportunity. I'm going to give you the floor and kind of you go ahead with your panel discussion and how you're going to guide this conversation today. Enjoy it. Thank you so much, Dalton.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you all for having me. I'm very excited to help host this panel. Like Dr. Coffin said, my name is Dalton Kendrick. I'm a first year student here at UT Austin, and I am a research assistant here at the National Disability Center. Um, so I want to start by introducing the three students we have on our panel. If they want to go ahead and bring themselves on camera. Go. Awesome. There we go. So first, I'd like to introduce Soren Aldako, a graduate student in the Educational Psychology Department with a specialization in Human Development, Cultures, and Learning Sciences, and is also a student fellow here at the National Disability Center. Next, I would like to introduce Ife Adekoya, an undergraduate student in psychology on the pre-medical track with double minors in American Sign Language and Forensic Science, who's also a student fellow here at the Disability Center. And our last panelist is going to be Jackson Day, a doctoral candidate in information sciences, focusing on the intersection of AI and accessibility in higher education, and is also a research assistant here at the National Disability Center for Student Success. So thank you all for joining me. I appreciate y'all being here. So just to start off, if y'all want to take a second and just share with everyone here a quick overview of your overall background and any context on your discussion around disclosure in your higher education journey. And to start off, we'll have Soren share.
Hi, everyone. I am Soren. As Dalton mentioned, I am a student fellow here at the National Disability Center and a master's student in the Human Development, Culture, and Learning Sciences program. Generally speaking, I have a lot of interest in understanding identity narratives, especially those associated with disabled experiences or even pathology. And some of my current research interests include how we attribute our experiences to stable or unstable factors. And also interested in just populations who are experiencing things like ADHD, autism, gender dysphoria, et cetera, and the potential impact of mindset in these areas.
Amazing. Thank you for being here, Soren. And then I will go ahead and pass the question on to Ife. Ife still here? All right, we're gonna move to. Oh, there you are. Hi, Ife.
uh, momentarily.
There you go.
Hello. Okay. Sorry, I was momentarily having an issue with
No, you're
adjust.
okay. Do you want me to share the question again for you?
Yes.
Okay. If you could just give just a quick overview for everyone here, your background and any context you'd like to share around disclosure in your higher education journey.
So I am currently a senior. I'm psych and pre-med, and I didn't receive accommodations until about my sophomore year. So closer to like the end of popular disclosure time period. I only ended up doing it because my friends recommended I do it. And I wasn't really enthusiastic because the process ended up being so difficult, and very winded. But overall, it has brought me to the center and it has like helped me build a community of people and students that are like-minded because we all understand that this is a hard experience, but we are able to get through it. So, yeah.
So thank you for sharing. And then Jackson, I'm going to pass the question on to you. Same question.
Okay, hi everyone. As previously mentioned, my name is Jackson Day. I'm a PhD student at the School of Information and a research associate for the Disability Center. My reason for looking at disclosures and being on panels like these is I really want to identify and find solutions for barriers existent to disabled students when they pursue higher education, and disclosure is one of those.
Thank you. And just a follow-up question that I'm going to have all of you answer very quickly. Outside of your academic work, is there anything you'd want to share about the decision you make or to take this active role in conversations around these various disability topics that we're doing? And we'll go in the same order. So we'll start with Soren.
Yeah, that's a great question, Dalton. As someone who has lived sort of every angle of this issue, I am someone who has disabilities. I'm an advocate in this space and have been for quite some time. And I also was a caregiver growing up and I'm a caregiver now. I feel like I have this ability to navigate the tensions in this discourse well, and to interject nuance that I know we all can appreciate, especially when we're balancing those different perspectives. So that's a lot of what motivates me.
Thank you. Ife?
I think that this is a bigger issue that's been prevailing for a really long time. Like, higher education has always had a lot of barriers, just generally depending on different factors. And so, disability is something that needs to be not only discussed, but if there's ways that we can change the culture around it and the way we approach it in higher education, it'll be a lot more beneficial long term for students as we keep progressing. And hopefully, the things that we're doing here will be able to have some concrete changes for students in the future.
Amazing. Thank you. And then Jackson, we'll pass the question to you.
Sorry, Dalton, I was actually just messaging you. You froze up for me for a minute after I responded to your first question, so I didn't get it.
Oh, no worries. So the question was just a quick follow-up, just outside of your academic work, um, kind of what drives you to take this active role in these conversations around the various disability topics that we're discussing?
Okay, got it. So, basically, what drives me in its simplest form is if I'm experiencing these barriers and if the people on this panel are experiencing these issues, I know that there will be people after us who also have to run the gauntlet, as it were. And I think we're in a unique position to try to make effort to make it easier for the next group of people.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for those quick introductions. So moving into the question regarding disclosure, Dr. Cawthon shared in the presentation how some of the results we've seen in our previous studies relating to disclosure. So 36% of students in our study didn't disclose at all to anyone at their institution, peers, faculty, or the institution itself. And of the students who decided to disclose to someone, only about 47% of them actually disclosed to the accommodations office. And one thing we found was relatively few students who say they have a disability actually disclose to that disability accommodations office. And then we see in the data, it's slightly higher for faculty, disclosure to faculty with or without an official letter from the office, so formal versus informal disclosures. And then the highest rate we found was disclosure to peers. I'd like to get y'all's reactions of these results, kind of what y'all think about what we found in our initial study. And we'll start off with Ife.
For me, it makes a lot of sense just because it is so difficult to get your accommodations. It's a very tiring and also long process. And the annoying part is most of the time you're going through it as you're in the middle of the semester. So it's just another layer of stress. And I feel like students are able to get that same level of like relief by just disclosing to their professors informally or just telling their friends. Because I mean, your friends are there to support you, and if you feel like you can trust them, they will have a really large impact in your ability to like almost just cope with it. Because like personal experience, like if it wasn't for my friends, I wouldn't have applied for accommodations in the first place. Like if it was just up to me, my own discretion, I probably would have just like brushed it off. Um, and so I think it really sucks because there are so many benefits to getting your official accommodations. Like it really does transform your college experience and my experience personally, and at least for my friends that have the same thing. But it's so difficult that what's the point for some people? Just depending on different factors like timing. Yeah, honestly, just timing. So,
Yeah, so it sounds a lot like the process is very difficult, which can lead to that. What can kind of help us explain that initial number of the low disclosure to the disability office versus informal disclosures to faculty might be a little easier, and peers is a little easier from that. Is that kind of what I understood from that?
yes.
Okay, amazing. Thank you for sharing. Jackson, I'd love to get your reaction to those numbers as well.
Perfect. So those numbers do make sense to me, and I think it comes down to two things, speed and risk. A lot of times when you're going through a formal process, say disclosing to the Disability Service Office, like our last panelist said, you may already be in the middle of the semester. So to go through that process, by the time you finish it, you may already be behind in your courses. And then some faculty, depending on the format of their course, may not necessarily know how to adequately deploy those accommodations based on their teaching style and format. If you're disclosing to a faculty member, you're getting right to the heart of it, and the faculty member can just tell you, here's what I can do, or, help you come up with a way to work around certain things. And it doesn't require as much paperwork, time, and actors involved. By actors, I mean staff and other people. And then for disclosing to your friends, that is the least amount of risk because they're not personally involved in the issue and they can't really say yes or no to deploying accommodations either way. You're just getting it off your chest. So those particular findings make a lot of sense to me.
Thank you. Soren, yes, I see you have your hand raised.
Did I raise my hand? That wasn't
Yeah.
intentional. Sorry.
No, you're okay. It's your turn anyway.
Yeah, so I think my colleagues spoke into some pretty important facts here, like regarding the complexity and some of the worries around disclosure, in particular when it comes to institutional accommodations. Something that I immediately think here is, or a question that I ask rather, is, what are our needs, right? I think a lot of disclosure depends on what your needs are because disability right, covers a lot of things. And there are certain disabilities that will require or benefit from institutional accommodation, but there are a lot of disabilities where the primary treatments and supports happen outside of the university through medication, through therapy, and might not necessarily require some of those systemic, right, structural supports. I also have to really question, what is the mechanism of interpersonal versus professional disclosure. So why are we disclosing to an institution, right? Maybe for some of those structural barriers compared to why are we disclosing to peers? Maybe for belonging, understanding, some of that just, straight up support that Ife mentioned. And I think important there is, maybe for us to recognize that we even speak from a place of bias as individuals with disabilities who are at a high achieving four-year college, right? Where there's a lot of people who, even with accommodations or without accommodations, don't even make it to be in this setting. So just considering that everybody's disabilities are different, and there's almost a sweet spot that we fall in to either need to ask for or to be able to benefit from institutional accommodations here, or to even decide whether or not to disclose.
Thank you. Yeah, so we see kind of a lot of the same things coming up from, I think, a lot of y'all responses is speed, risk. I like the way you put that, Jackson. Speed, risk, and then sorry, you talked about needs of, sometimes the accommodations through a university may not provide the accommodations you need for the classroom. So that may be a reason why we are seeing that rate be so much lower. And then again, speed of how long the process takes, the time that you have to put into seeking these accommodations and providing documentation. And once you get that letter, it may be a couple weeks into the semester or longer. So at that point, you've been having to work through the semester without these accommodations. And then the risk of, the accommodations may not provide what you're asking for. And I think that may be why we see a higher rate of kind of this informal disclosure with professors, of just having a conversation with them and seeing what they can provide without an accommodation letter as best as possible, to help them while you're waiting for a letter, or just without having to disclose to the institution. So thank you all for sharing those. I think that's a lot of great insights. So moving on to our next question. So we've talked a lot about the disclosure process and the rates that we've been seeing, but another thing we're really interested in is the disclosure decision-making process of whenever you are going to make a disclosure decision, whether it be to a peer or faculty and staff or the institution through the accommodations office, we're kind of wanting to learn a little bit about what is that decision-making process you're going through. Are there specific things you are considering in the moment? So I'd love to hear from each of you if you could share an experience with disclosure in an academic setting, and kind of give some of the factors that you took into account when making that disclosure decision. And we'll start with Jackson.
Oh, you're switching up the order on us, throwing us a curveball. Well, there have been several times where I've weighed some disclosure decisions. In my undergraduate years, the first thing I can think of is any sort of math course. I can remember my first statistics course where I just went to the professor's office, introduced myself, talked to him about his course, told him I wanted to do well in it, and tried to figure out how to kind of adapt the content, because this was my first year at college and I didn't quite know how the accommodations process worked. So I was still going through that, but I needed the accommodations right quick. And that process was successful. And that particular professor is still a mentor of mine. I keep in contact with him. So in my personal experience, the disclosure to the professor route often works, especially if you show them that you're doing it because you care about your overall success in the course. I hope that answers that question.
No, absolutely. And if I can ask a follow-up question, having that positive experience with that professor, does that help you in future disclosure decisions when you're talking to professors? Like he obviously you mentioned he had responded really well to it. Does that make it feel less intimidating, making future like disclosures to your faculty in future classes?
Absolutely, because you almost view it as, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So you have to give that particular professor the opportunity to say yes. Because if you don't, well, the answer will by default be no, because they don't know what you need. And a lot of times, in my experience, the professors actually prefer not having to sign a bunch of paperwork because that almost makes them feel like, what am I signing and what happens if I implement this wrong? It takes them more out of the equation than many of them would like to be, I think.
It's a great insight. Thank you for that. Soren, I'd love to hear from you next.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, Jackson. I often consider when it comes to disclosure, what is the purpose of disclosure here, right? This is something I keep coming back to, is just really trying to think about, what is the mechanism behind my choice and why would I make one choice over another? Often I think this means for me balancing institutional supports with internal skills building. So I was diagnosed with ADHD very young, around age 7, and I've received accommodations for that in some ways since age 7. But in other ways, I've received different accommodations now in college that I didn't have before. And as I've worked to implement those over these last 6 years at the University of Texas, I've had to really ask myself, okay, I have this accommodation, for example, flexibility with deadlines. And, a deadline's coming up, and for various reasons, I don't have a lot done toward that assignment, whether that's because I'm having a difficult time managing some of my other responsibilities, because I forgot about it, because I'm having, I also have an autoimmune disorder, I'm having a flare up. And I really have to sit and think, okay, do I ask for more time? Or is this a moment where, I maybe could have put more time in, instead of, like, if I could have maybe worked to accommodate myself from within, right? Because we have these external accommodations, but we can also internally accommodate ourselves through learning new skills, through learning new strategies, and through various forms of coping. And so really, asking, just because things are hard, does that, since we know learning is also generally a very hard thing, right? To build new neural pathways is difficult, right? It feels difficult. Does that mean I need an intervention? And in some cases, it's yes. In some cases, it is okay. This difficulty and my experience with it is why I have these accommodations. So I've really tried, and it still didn't necessarily, add up to the point of being able to do this without pulling my flexibility with deadlines accommodation out. But, in other cases, I have been like, no, look, I can't push off a presentation tomorrow. That's not actually logistically possible. It's not necessarily reasonable. It might actually affect my peers, right? In a negative way, in a way that, in a different definition of disability, disables their classroom experience in that moment because so much planning has already gone into that. And, in some cases, I've also just accepted the consequences. And so that's my personal situation. It's something I consider is just, what is that mechanism of disclosure, and am I actually accommodating myself in the long term as well, or just that short term moment?
Thank you. Yeah, the internal accommodations that you mentioned, I hadn't heard that brought up before, and I think that's very, very interesting. So thank you for sharing that. Ife, we'll pass to you.
Thank you for sharing, Soren. Like, I really resonate with the internal accommodations because it's just kind of like, do I bite the bullet? Could I have done better? Because, I mean, you have everything handed to you in terms of like them trying to help you, but what are you doing to help yourself, kind of? In terms of the question itself, for me, I always just consider how accessible the professor is. And so after received my accommodations, I got priority registration. And so for every class, because I'm taking primarily STEM classes, I look for like the highest rated professor, not only in terms of like, ability to teach and get the point across to the class and a very simple way, but also those professors just tend to be kinder, and just more patient with students as a whole. And those are the professors that I think would be very willing to give accommodations without the letter, which really sucks because I wouldn't be able to have access to those professors without my letter, because I wouldn't have priority registration. So it's kind of a very difficult thing because some professors are really nice. Like if you just pick a random professor, like some of them are willing, but it really is like there's also like institutional barriers. There's like literally the structure of the class, like how much time can they give you without being unfair to other students. So I understand like their side as well. And so I feel like the accommodations letter has kind of been just like a shield for me in terms of like feeling confident in being able to like ask, because it's almost like I have this piece of paper validating that like no, I do need extra time sometimes, and like I do need extra help instead of just having to like be at their mercy. Um but yeah, that's been my experience with considering that.
Thank you. I like what you mentioned of using formal like supports like early registration to support the potential of doing informal kind of requests for accommodations. And then how you mentioned kind of having that letter is beneficial because you get those supports, but it's also if you run into a professor who is not able to accommodate, you have kind of something to fall back on almost of if we aren't able to work informally, well, I have a formal portion as well. But thank you all for sharing. I think that provides a lot of insight as we're working through this. It's helping provide more ways of looking at things that I hadn't considered. Just moving into our final question, I'd love to hear some kind of final takeaways or anything you'd like the audience to really remember or take from this conversation. If you wanted them to take one thing from what we talked about, or one or two things, what would it be? We'll start with you, Ife.
I think the main takeaway would just be to lead with empathy. And if you can help a student, just give them the benefit of the doubt and help them. I understand there's ways that people could take advantage of that, but at its core, like to get to this level of education, it is a difficult thing. And life also gets more difficult as you keep growing up. And so just keeping that in mind, whether it's informally or informally, in terms of accommodations, just like leading with kindness with your students, and just giving them the benefit of the doubt in that sense.
Thank you, Ife. Jackson, your kind of key, your final takeaway.
Perfect. I would say don't be afraid to ask anything that may be of help. If you're talking to a student and you feel like a piece of information may be missing that's helpful for you to have, start the conversation. Because that's the only way that all of this stuff gets pushed forward. We're here because we want to talk to you, and we don't want you to be afraid to talk to us.
Amazing. And Soren, to you finally.
Yeah, so I actually, with this little bit of final time, I think it relates very well to some of the things I've talked about. I saw some discussion in the chat regarding informal disclosures and this idea of accommodating students who reach out to us with family emergencies. And, a recent experience I had in my own role as a teaching assistant was, we had maybe 40 students reach out in the past couple of weeks about family emergencies and just a lot of what we have observed as being highly detailed, sometimes AI generated disclosures about these personal experiences, looking for informal accommodations. And it was, I think, something in this particular instructional staff that we really had to sit with because we're all very highly empathetic people who understand the nuances of disability and how we want to assume the best and give our students the benefit of the doubt. And I think there is a balance there, right, where you can give someone the benefit of the doubt and also like especially benefit of the doubt regarding their bandwidth being stretched and them desiring support and connection, and also hold firm boundaries where we told our students like, look, we need you to reach out to the student emergency office and get some sort of supporting announcement from them, because there's so many of you, and it's at the point where actually it's really stressing out and causing some of our own difficulties to flare up within the instructional staff. And so there's that trade-off there that I think maybe is present in other areas of disability, where we have to consider the bandwidth of staff as it compares to the bandwidth of students, staff and faculty as it compares to the bandwidth of students. And that sometimes it's okay to compromise and have those conversations where it's like, okay, look, I can't give you 2 extra weeks on this assignment, but maybe you can come into office hours and we can talk about it further, or I can give you a couple of extra days, or I can take whatever you have now and we'll do 10 points off, or just you can really have it be a human conversation. And I think that in recognizing the humanity of all parties here, maybe that's what we should be doing more of, especially when we are trying to really, I think, recognize our own experiences, and that there's a lot of disclosure in some places where students might need to accept, they turned in an assignment late, and yet not enough where students with disabilities are not reaching out when they really, really do need that support from us in different ways. So.
A perfect way of closing out this conversation. I love that point, Soren, of conversations. I think really is at the core of support where you can, and if there are limitations, have conversations and see what can be done. So thank you all for joining us. We appreciate y'all so much being a part of this panel. I didn't see any questions in the chat. I think we have time for maybe one if someone wants to throw one in last second. If not, I'd like to say thank you to the panel for being here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Okay, well, we do have a little bit of time left for a poll. If no other questions, we can do a poll. So if we can send that out to the audience for their thoughts on the panel. You panelists can turn your video off and we'll begin that poll now. Thanks so much. This is a question that we have for all of you. What topics or factors do you think are the most important to examine related to disclosure decision making? So what do you think our agenda for our research needs to include? And there's a whole list of options here. Previous experiences with disclosure, inaccessible learning environments, faculty preparation for disclosure moments, institutional responsiveness to requests and timeliness of said requests, authentic expression of identity, student demographics or characteristics that really matter, and disclosure timing and purpose. And so any that you think are important, you can choose. In fact, you can choose them all if you like. I'll just give it a moment for everyone to vote or enter their answer. Okay. Are we ready for the results? They're coming in soon. There they are. We've got them. Okay, great. We have 16 votes. Most people said previous experience was a part of disclosure. Inaccessible learning environments, also important, because I think it might be that folks think, well, if it's accessible, there's no need to disclose. And then that faculty's preparation for disclosure, I think that could be an entire new toolkit based on these results. Institutional responsiveness to requests. Most people did say that that was a piece of it. Authentic expression of identity. That had a lower response rate, but still. Student and, disclosure, time and purpose seemed roughly half. Okay, all right. So I can see real clearly our top four. I think we can all see that those top 4 options. So thank you so much, and we will take that into consideration when designing our next research topic and what we're doing next. Thank you so much for that. All right, next slide, if you would, please. Next, please. All right, again, thank you so much for the audience participation. And if we could get your feedback on the panel, that would be amazing. Also, there are some other things, what you would like to see covered in our upcoming presentations or town halls and how we can develop our resources better to meet your needs. Here on the slide, you'll see the QR code. We'll leave it up for a moment so you all can grab that. And there's no moment like the present moment. So if you're able to do it now, that'd be incredible. And Mitra has also put it there in the chat box for you if you just want to use the link. We'll give you an opportunity to capture that. That way you are able to give us that feedback. And we really appreciate you doing that. And you all are able, I can see Sarah just put something in there, sharing your LinkedIn. You all are more than welcome to do that. This is a great opportunity for all of you to engage and interact. You can share your contact info in the chat if you like. All right, next slide, please. Okay, stay connected, please. We're always talking about connecting and communicating, how we can get in touch or in depth with more different organizations and in the post-secondary spaces. We can, and then if you reach out to us, then we can share your program, your organization, and then connect us with other folks in your network. We're always happy to have that. Our newsletter is super exciting. We've got over 500 people signed up as of this week, so this is thrilling. So please use that. Subscribe to it's a LinkedIn newsletter, so you all tap into that. The third thing is we are going to AERA this year. It's the American Educational Research Association, and it's in Los Angeles, California this April. And we are presenting 3 different things related to outcomes from the center. They are all led by students or grad students. Hey, well, we hope to see you all around again. Thank you so much. And we'll say for just a moment if anyone's got any questions that you'd like to place in the chat box. Otherwise, have a great day, and we'll hope to see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.